When you're in the purity of pain, it's so all-consuming that it breaks everything down about who you think you are and reveals something else. And the deeper you go into the darkness, the greater you'll find the light.
Hey friends, I'm excited to introduce you to my dear friend Akshay Nanavati on the Empire Show today, because this is an inside look. And today we're going to talk to Akshay, who, like me, is an immigrant and unlike me, has served this country in the U.S. military. And he's got just a fascinating story and author of a fantastic book, Fearvana. Akshay, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, brother.
Appreciate
Honored
you.
to be here.
Yeah. So we were texting, I don't know, maybe 3-4 weeks ago. You were like, "Hey B, looking forward to coming out there, but just want to let you know I'm going to Alaska. I'm about to climb a mountain." Tell us how that climb went.
Yes, I went to go climb Denali, the tallest mountain in North America. It was an epic journey, but we did not make the summit because the storms were gnarly, brutal storms. I mean, it was very, very intense out there. We got to high camp, and we actually passed the toughest part of the climb, which is the move from Camp 3 to high camp at 17,000 feet. But woke up, the whole night, the tent was like being battered by the wind.
Well, I saw the videos that you showed me there, and it was just,
it was intense.
That had to be like 40, 50 mile an hour winds easily, right?
Yeah, and that, like, at high camp is not a place you want to be, especially moving towards the summit. So, you gotta, this nature of mountaineering, the weather, the mountain's always in control. You go out there to experience it, and hopefully
you've done stuff like this before.
I've done a lot of stuff like
where
this.
you're really challenging yourself and stepping way out of your comfort zone. And in fact, when you and I met, I think it was at Dan Fleischman and Joel Marion's $100 million mastermind.
Yeah.
When we met, I remember you telling me about all the different ways you like to go about challenging yourself. How did that begin?
That the pursuit of that suffering began when I joined the Marines. So before this, lived a great life. Parents could not have asked for better parents, gave me a blessed life. I was born in India, as you said, I was an immigrant, moved from India to Singapore and then to the US at the age of 13.
Gotcha.
So soon after moving, I got very heavily into drugs, into alcohol. I used to cut myself. I still have these scars on my arm that you could see, burn myself, and in this very dark world. And I watched the movie Black Hawk Down. Have you ever seen that movie?
Yep.
That movie was the trigger that changed my life. Watching that movie, and I don't know if you remember that scene when Gary Gordon and Randy Sugar, the two soldiers, they were in the chopper and they volunteered to go to the ground, knowing that thousands of armed enemy personnel are headed to this downed Black Hawk. It was the second Black Hawk that crashed, and they volunteered to go down there anyway to set up a defensive perimeter. Both of them died, but Michael Durant, the man that they died protecting, is still alive today because of their actions. And watching that just triggered something in me. It made me question this very selfish, worthless, meaningless life I was living. I'd been blessed with so much and I was doing nothing with it at the time. And almost overnight, I stopped doing drugs, decided to join the Marines. And it took me about 1.5 years to join because I have a blood disorder that 2 doctors told me would kill me in boot camp. So I had to sort of fight my way in. I had to get a medical waiver. And honestly, if it wasn't post 9/11, I would not have gotten in.
Gotcha.
Because I also have like flat feet, scoliosis. I'm a genetic mess.
Actually, it's interesting that you say that. So pre 9/11, when I attempted to join the Marine Corps, my flat feet is what prevented me back in 1994. And they actually took my friend Dave, I won't say his last name, good dude. He was just like, he's like 5 foot tall by 5 foot wide. And they took him and they're like, "You've got flat feet." I'm like, "I'm fine with it. Like, I'm good." They're like, no. But with him, they're like, "He just needs to lose weight." And they started giving him B12 or B6 shots. And he lost a substantial amount of weight where he met the BMI index.
Yeah.
And he went off and I was like, crap, man. Like,
that's ridiculous.
Right? So it's funny. So post 9/11, they kind of loosened the...
Totally. Because here's a young kid wanting to go Marine Corps infantry.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way I would have gotten in with my flat feet, scoliosis, and this blood disorder before 9/11.
Yeah.
So managed to get in, fight my way in, and that's when I started to learn the beauty of suffering. The beauty of it, because obviously Marine Corps training was hard.
Yeah.
And I wasn't super fit at the time. I had just gotten out of doing like 1.5 years of drugs, so obviously I wasn't in the great shape, but I thrived mentally.
Yeah.
I graduated infantry school, was an honor graduate of my platoon, and then coming out of the Marines is when I started to look for other ways to suffer, other ways to explore how far we can test the human spirit. And outdoor sports became my playground. everything, like you name it, cross-country skiing, rock climbing, skydiving, mountain climbing, fracturing 4 bones in 3 months from skydiving and rock climbing. Like nature became my playground to explore myself and the true limitlessness of the human soul.
I would say suffering, not necessarily the broken bones, but suffering as in adversity and hardship by doing difficult stuff.
Doing difficult stuff, yeah. Like, well, I got into ultra running a little later, and obviously then, just the Marines was hard. Marine training was always miserable.
Sure.
Embrace the suck is like the fundamental mantra in the Marines. But that's how I started to seek that out and really embrace it. But, and then after, in 2007, so 3 years after enlisting, I was deployed to Iraq as an infantry non-commissioned officer. So one of my jobs in Iraq was to walk in front of our vehicles looking for bombs before they could be used to kill me and my fellow Marines.
How did that go for you?
It was,
well,
as you can
imagine, it went well. You're here.
I'm here, thankfully. But, obviously it was a fairly dangerous job because if somebody was going to get blown up, guess who it would be?
Right.
But at this point, I had developed a comfort with fear. And I developed a comfort with navigating adversity. So I thrived out there. I mean, in all honesty, when I went out there, I didn't expect to come back alive. I went out there, this is not a healthy mindset at all, but I had lost a friend before I went to Iraq. We had joined the same unit together and we did everything together. We trained together, like we wanted to go to war together. So we volunteered multiple times to go out there. Twice the Marines told us we were going and last minute they canceled it. And one summer while I was vacationing in India, he finally found a unit to go with and he was killed out there.
Wow.
Because he was a good Marine, he was promoted to corporal and he was placed in a seat that was hit with an IED. And so what happened, I struggled with that immensely. I mean, to this day, it shows up from time to time. But because when we trained together, I might have beat him by like 1 point in the rifle range or 2 seconds on a run. Barely, we were the same kind of Marine. So in my mind, I always had this feeling that I should have gone out there to get that promotion, not because I was better than him, but because I wanted to be in that seat where he was sitting so he could have come back home to his family. So when I finally got my chance to go, it was like, if I have to, again, this is not like a healthy mindset, but if I have to go, I'd rather it be me than somebody else. So when it was that job, I was like, sweet, like, I'll take it, And I didn't expect to come back alive.
How did your parents do with the idea of you joining the Marine Corps?
They struggled with it, understandably. This was post 9/11.
Yeah.
So here I am, Indian. I wasn't even a U.S. citizen at the time. I was a green card holder. So joining a country that wasn't my country, fighting a war that wasn't my war. And almost certainly I would have gone to war, which obviously I did.
Yeah.
But they were also in a really hard place because on the one hand, they see their kid, they didn't know to the extent that I was descending down this path of drugs. Like I lost 2 friends to drug addiction.
Got it. So you were doing good at hiding it, meaning?
I was hiding it.
From them?
From them.
What about the cutting and self-mutilation?
I was hiding all of it. Like now they know because obviously I'm no longer that way. I did get caught smoking weed in school. I was a dumbass. I got caught doing everything. Yeah. So I got caught, but they didn't know how far I was into it, like doing, just you name it, the drug, anything I could find. And lost 2 friends to it and was like literally was heading down that path.
Yeah.
But being that I got caught doing everything, like stealing in school, drugs, alcohol, this, that, and the other thing, they were like, on the one hand, they see this kid descending into a dark path. On the other, they see that now I'm joining the military. So they're kind of this between a rock and a hard place. They struggled with it. They really struggled with it. And, even when I was in Iraq, like, it's so much harder for the family back home than it is for us out there.
Yeah.
We're in the mess, like we're in the suck. So we get to deal with it. It consumes our consciousness. Back home is always the unknown. So now they're very proud of me. They're very proud of who it made me. I mean, being a Marine is one of the proudest things of my life, and serving in that brotherhood, And but initially it was very hard. It was definitely a struggle.
As you come to the United States, what prompted the immigration to the United States for you guys?
My dad's job is why we moved around a lot. My dad worked for, he worked for 3M for 27 years.
Wow.
So he started like with 3M India started. He was one of the first employees in 3M India, kind of worked his way up the ranks, and then 15, 20 years later, he ran 3M India. He was the managing director for 3M India. So we moved around a lot because of his job. Yeah.
Got it. And that ended up kind of being the reason that you guys moved to the United States.
Moved to Austin, and then I moved to Minneapolis, and then after that, I went on my own way. But they moved to Israel and then back to India.
No kidding.
Yeah, so they moved around a lot. He was running 3M Israel, then 3M India. So just
where do they live now? I'm curious.
Back in India, in Bangalore.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm actually heading there tomorrow.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Are you really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Going there for a few weeks. Yeah.
Gotcha. And so you spend this time in the Marine Corps, and it's clear why at least to me, it's very clear why it attracted you. You know, it's hard. There's the fear of the unknown. There's some kind of suffering and risk-taking involved. I imagine that the drugs and the self-mutilation was some level of suffering that you were putting yourself through. Have you figured out what it is that triggers this need for suffering in you?
You know, at the time when I was doing the drugs, obviously there was a very unhealthy way to channel this. At a young age, I realized, like, when I was a kid in Bangalore, I used to play rugby, and when we'd get cut, I would love the cut. It was like a battle wound, right? Like, I got cut up. And so there was something in me that I never fully understood or channeled till only recently about seeking, when you go through pain, there's a purity to it. It's all consuming. You know, it sheds the masks we wear, whatever mask we put on about the facade in this human condition when we meet people. And when you're in the purity of pain, it's so all-consuming that it breaks everything down about who you think you are and reveals something else. And the deeper you go into the darkness, the greater you'll find the light. So you have, like, now, I say you have to, because you do, like, in my experience, you have to experience suffering to truly know the essence of the human spirit, of what you're capable of, and what the human animal is capable of. And really to, whatever God means to you, to understand divinity. I mean, there's a reason why I believe they say there's no atheists in foxholes. Because when you're in hell, when you taste the edge of life and death, when you're in the darkness, like the absolute darkness, you will find something that you can't find anywhere else. And you have to go there. I mean, that's one of the draws, like why I wanted to join the Marines was, you know, like you said, the challenge. But when you, like, war is this experience where you taste the extremes of the human condition. You see the absolute worst, the horrors of war, people doing awful things to each other, but you see the absolute best. People sacrificing their lives for each other, jumping on grenades for each other. And only on those edges can you experience that. And that's the draw now. Like, the way I see it is like replicating war without the horrors of war.
Sure.
But that's one of the big draws to the Marines too, was serving an institution where the good of the group matters more than the individual. So I also think one of the draws of suffering is that it builds a level of camaraderie that you cannot build unless, like, when you suffer together. I mean, you get this with what you do, right?
Yeah,
the Modern Day Night Project,
yeah.
exactly. I mean, you suffer together, you come together.
Yeah.
It builds a camaraderie, and so I love that experience. I didn't fully get it again at the time, right? Like, drugs and this way became there was no virtue in this pain. There was nothing to it. It was not with conscious awareness. There was no virtue to it. Drugs became a vehicle to push myself to the extreme, but obviously was extremely unhealthy. And thankfully, I got out before I easily could have gone to.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because, you know, oftentimes I'll quote some stuff that we share in the project on social media, like suffering will introduce you to your highest self.
Yeah.
Suffering will introduce you to your purest self. Like, a lot of, you know, we've all seen it, and I'm not here to knock anybody, and I'm not going to mention any names, but we've all seen it where people are beating their chest on social media, but then they get in a ring with someone, whether it's on the mats like jiu-jitsu, or they put on boxing gloves, and the first time they get hit, or the first time they get put in some kind of a uncomfortable position, an arm bar, some kind of a chokehold, they completely changed. They weren't that guy who was beating their chest and talking crap, and it's like, holy crap, the masks came off, right? On the flip side, in that suffering, if that person chooses to stay and what we call maintain their green, stay calm under pressure, under chaos, and choose to remember what their coach taught them, etc., you begin to meet your highest self. That, holy crap, if under this level of pressure I'm willing to do and resort back to my training and get out of this, you know, chokehold. Okay, you know, chin down and wedge the fingers in there and create a breathing gap, and all of a sudden you realize what more you're capable of when there's not chaos around you. It's like the glass ceiling, the limiting glass ceiling is raised. And so what I'm hearing you say is, while you were, I guess you started off doing this unhealthy suffering, but you quickly realized that, hey, there's this higher level of suffering that can happen where I'm going to meet my truest and highest self. Can I ask how old you are?
36.
So at 36 now, how well do you feel you know yourself? And the reason I ask is because you kind of dropped the term human animal, which makes me wonder if you've read Joseph Campbell's writings.
I have.
You have?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I'm a big fan of Joseph Campbell.
Likewise.
Yeah. And I imagine you've done a lot of the self-work then. And
Absolutely.
Do you feel you really know yourself now?
There's, as you know, of course, there's always more to discover, but I have gone, like one of the more intense things I've done among many, but I did a darkness retreat where I spent 7 days in pitch darkness, silence, and isolation, 24/7 darkness. So unlike my more physical endeavors, this, you're practicing pure stillness. And when you're in complete darkness, you have nowhere external to go. Like right now, if I'm, let's say, in a silent place, there's those silent retreats that a lot of people do, the Vipassanas, 10-day silent retreats. If you're still seeing, so I can still look at a wall and say, that's a wall, this is a plant. So my mind has somewhere external to go. In darkness, you have nowhere external to go. So you're forced to go within, and that's a very intense and beautiful and profound journey. So as a result of that and all these things that I've done, I feel very blessed to say that I have explored I've explored myself very deeply. And I think I know myself well, but I'm at a point now where I'm looking, because what got you here won't get you there, wherever there is. So now I'm training for things that have never been done before. I'm hoping, I will build this massive empire while training for expeditions. Each one of these can be a full-time job, right? Building a business, as you all of course know, and training for expeditions that are never done. Each one can be a full-time job. Now, if I stay trapped in the paradigms and the constructs that have built me into who I am today, I will never be able to do something that's never been done before. So therefore, the point that I'm making is, to know yourself, you also have to be willing to let go and destroy everything you think you know about yourself in order to create new constructs about yourself, about the human animal, about the human condition, about the world. Right? Because your beliefs have worked up to this point. Like I'm blessed to be in a good spot. I feel like I've achieved a good amount in my life. But now, where are those same paradigms limiting me? You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I've explored myself, but I'm now finding new ways to shatter what I think I know in order to evolve to a new self.
Sure.
And I think that journey is relentless, right?
Yeah, you're right. Not only is that journey relentless, but it's ongoing in that. If we had another 100 years to live, like I always kind of think to myself that if mom and dad gave me the right genetics, and if my environment allows, and then my mindset, my attitude, my diet, nutrition, sleep, etc., all line up, I'll probably eke out 100 years on this planet of healthy living, not like slowly deteriorating and ending up in a diaper and for the last 10 years of my life.
Yeah.
And I really believe that, and I really believe those thoughts end up manifesting into the reality. Well, if I had another 100 years and another 100 years after that, I would still keep peeling the onions of self-discovery.
Yeah.
And who is the consciousness that I am, and discover that. And so, interestingly enough, my wife and I were hiking the other day, and this beautiful snake, about a 5-foot snake, slithered right across our path. And it stopped. We're just kind of looking at it. It's got this beautiful kind of tan and brown pattern on it. And I was like, wow, I wonder if it's getting ready to shed, because you can tell like the skin was starting to maybe bubble up a little bit, right? And as I got to thinking, I'm like, that thing is going to shed its skin and have new skin underneath, and probably shed again and shed again. And each time we shed the old skin, the human animal, and that human being or consciousness comes closer to the surface, where we get to have better understanding. And that's why I operate that way. That's why I think that way. This is why I interact with friends and family, and this is why my trust issues come from, and this is why loyalty is such an important thing to me. And it's so neat, because we need to shed our own skin as well, in terms of dying to our old ways, as good old JC, Joseph Campbell, says. So to that point, how do you, because the Empire Show is about building empires and businesses, and of course self-discovery and self-betterment. Dude, there's people who literally get sponsored to do what you do, so that they can just train and condition and recover full time. Yet you're also an entrepreneur. How do you even balance all that?
I chose, when I first started getting into this stuff, I had pondered getting into the sponsored athlete route. I chose not to. Not that there's a right, wrong, good, bad, but I chose not to because there's a lot of broke sponsored athletes.
Sure.
A lot of broke sponsored athletes. And they have to do with kind of what they're but they have to kind of play the game of sponsorships. The sponsor kind of controls in some way, and then when they speak, like one of my sponsored athlete friends told me every time he speaks, he has to mention all the sponsors. And I was like, I don't want to do that route. So I'm going to build a business, build a brand around what I do that will allow me to then kind of fund, because these are very expensive. As I was telling you, my Antarctica expedition this year is $120,000, so very expensive. So I'm going to build myself. So how I manage it is, the fundamental thing is partnering with people who are smarter than you, surrounding yourself with people who are smarter than you. My skill set where I shine is I am very good at enduring suffering. I'm pretty damn good. I would argue some of the best in the world. But most other things I don't know much about. I'm not the smartest entrepreneur by any stretch of the imagination, So where can I partner with people to build alliances that allow me to free up my time to train 20 hours a week? Even with my training, I'm about to start working with the top dog in the sort of polar expedition and mountaineering coach, because I know enough about fitness that has gotten me where I'm at, but for what I'm now training for, I need to it's not just mindless suffering, I need to train really smart. So same thing with business. I have blessed with incredibly smart, very successful entrepreneur friends who guide me, who help me. Every arm of what we're building with Fearvana is all partnerships. So we're launching a Fearvana clothing line. I've partnered with people who know what they're doing. Supplement line, partner with people who know what they're doing. So creating effective partnerships and surrounding yourself with smarter people than yourself is, that's where we met, right? At that event where I was arguably the dumbest entrepreneur in that room, the noob compared to most of those people. They were incredibly successful. I was a total noob. But that's where you learn. You got to be willing to put yourself in situations where you feel stupid. And I felt stupid in that room, but that's how I grow. So partnering with people allows me to constantly looking at, and it's an ever evolving thing where are those points of leverage where I can say, okay, this I don't need to be doing anymore. Here's where I can outsource. Here's where I can move the needle so I can then focus on this, And my main forte is adventure exploration. If I had to label myself one category, it'd be adventurer, explorer, not entrepreneur. So I want to build kind of like what Richard Branson did as the model. He was the brand, he was the face of the brand, right? He has nothing to do with most of the Virgin brands, but he built a brand around himself and this identity, and then he licenses the name. So that's kind of the model I want to follow to build the Fearvana empire, the Fearvana brand, because I also believe it's solving one of the greatest problems in the human condition, which is our negative relationship to suffering. Because if you think about it, if we develop a positive relationship to any kind of suffering, fear, pain, stress, anxiety, struggle, guilt, whatever the struggles of life, if we develop a positive relationship to it, inevitably we live a happier life. We live a more blissful life. Yep. And ultimately, what is it we seek, right? You can put whatever words you want to it. Happiness, fulfillment, inner peace. That's what we seek, right? Some flavor of that. And so what Fearvana is doing is helping people reframe their relationship to suffering, so we can say, even when I go through the pains of life, whether it's a pain that's been handed upon me or a pain I choose to seek, I can smile in the face of it. I can enjoy it. I can fall in love with it.
Tell me about Fearvana. How did you come up with what is now effectively the movement? And you were kind enough to give me your book. Love it. But how do you come up with the name, and how do you describe the movement and all the different, from apparel to supplements and all the different ways you're impacting?
So the name I did not come up with, my ex-wife did. I had been living this lifestyle, pursuing fear, seeking it, and we were trying to crystallize it. And when she said it, I was like, that is gold. That's it, yeah. That was awesome. We bought 20 different domain names, because it was, so I can say with no ego that I thought when I heard it was this is awesome, And she coined this name of this idea that we were living, because I had, at this point, so when it came up, I had just gotten out of, to kind of bring it back a little bit, when I came back from the war, I struggled. I was diagnosed with PTSD, struggled with depression, heavy drinking at a point in my life that I was downing a bottle of vodka at night. This would go on for days on end until I got to a point where I was seconds away from picking up a knife and slitting my wrists after one of these 5-day binge sessions. So when I hit rock bottom, that's when I started my climb out of that abyss. And it wasn't like a smooth, easy climb. It was a, crawling, fighting your way from it. I slipped again, all of that. Got to the other side. When I finally kind of really felt I was in a good space, healed, I wanted to share everything I had learned, And I remember meeting Jack Canfield, the author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, and I asked him, what would you do differently if you could go back in your career? He said, I would have written my book sooner. So I was like, all right, this would be a good time to share everything I've learned, because obviously I'm not the only person who's suffered. I had lost 2 junior Marines to suicide, and people, whether veteran or not, everybody suffers, of course. And so how can I share what I'm learning to help people reframe this? So I was like, all right, let me write a book. And originally I was going to call it The Other Side of Fear. But that kind of sounds like every other personal development book, right? And so Shruti, my ex-wife, coined Fearvana, and it was gold. And the way now I describe it is, the idea of it is that fear and nirvana are 2 seemingly contradictory ideas. right? People demonize fear all the time. I mean, how many times do you hear, be fearless, don't be scared? You know, people hear the word fear and don't think of it as something positive. And that was what we wanted to combat. Whether it be fear, stress, anxiety, pain, suffering, guilt, struggle, any of these words don't conjure up positivity. The essence of it was, okay, look, no matter how much I tell people fear is not bad, the word is still going to have an imprint in our subconscious. So we need to create a new one, right? So Fearvana became the essence to combat this demonization of fear, to say that, look, fear and nirvana are not in fact opposites, but they're complementary. Like, fear is not the antithesis of nirvana, but the access point to it. And so the fundamental essence of what we do is to help people develop a positive relationship to suffering of any kind, fear, struggle, all of it, develop positive relationships so they can find, live, and love their worthy struggle.
Let me just, before you go on, because I think you said it so matter-of-factly, our audience may have missed it. Fear is the access point, the entryway, the doorway to nirvana.
To bliss.
And
Absolutely.
to bliss, to happiness. And someone might go, well, wait, tell me more. How can that be? And I would challenge them by saying the things that scare you the most, once you've done them, have given you the greatest joy when you've accomplished it, right? The easiest would be, well, I'm afraid to jump out of an airplane and parachute down. It's scary. I have fear. And you do it, and the level of bliss and happiness and accomplishment you feel when you're now embracing the dirt, you know, like, oh my God, that was amazing. Launching a business, having a child. I mean, it's so scared to go, I'm going to get married and have a child, start a family, and then you do it, and you're like, holy cow, I get to raise and love and guide this beautiful little package, right? Like the bliss from that is massive. So it is indeed, fear is the access point to nirvana, to bliss and happiness. And you just, you know, you're so well spoken, and you speak so eloquently. I didn't want that point to be missed. I think that is truly the gem out of this this episode here. So in terms of your business, how do you partner with people? Like give me an example of how you start monetizing Fearvana so that you can go and hire a coach and get the gear and invest the time and the food and the training and the recovery to be able to, right? I mean, recovery is huge, to be able to, especially as you get older, you're 36 at 46 when you're doing this, at 56 when you're doing this, the recovery gets more expensive. As someone who's 46, I can tell you that, but I love it. Because that adds a new level of suffering that you're like, okay, this is different. My body's telling me something. What is it telling me? And you listen to it. But give me an example of how you've monetized Fearvana in whatever category you want, so that our audience can go, okay, that's something I could do as well.
Yeah. So, you know, initially when I started, I was just pure one-on-one coaching. That was the
What were you coaching people in?
Sort of a life coaching type thing. Yeah. So different,
reach your potential or your goals in life.
Different people from all walks, really, different from deep mental health struggles to, you know, people who are higher end, like peak performance, you know, so kind of the spectrum. Because I had been blessed to live that spectrum, right? So I was drawing people in, whether it be I'm on the edge of sort of, you know, darkness, PTSD, depression, mental health struggles, to I'm now at the cusp of mastery at my craft and I'm looking for that next edge, you know. But like life and sort of peak performance type coaching. Completely stopped that because I didn't want it. One-on-one coaching, as you know, is only so scalable. So I started selling digital information products. We have digital information products around sort of the Fearvana ethos. Right now I have a monthly membership program called the Fear Chasers Alliance. So building sort of recurring revenue engines, you know, and monthly membership where I do live sort of group trainings, things like that. Right now, that's what the main focus is, that digital realm. And where we're launching this year is and I also have a nonprofit, the Fearvana Foundation. Obviously, I don't make money off it; it's a nonprofit, and like all the proceeds from the book go to the nonprofit. So we do beautiful work supporting former child soldiers to survivors of sex trafficking, like really beautiful work that I'm blessed to be, an honor to be a part of. But as far as making money, right now it's primarily in the digital realm, and this year we're expanding to the sort of physical realm with the supplement line and the clothing line that we're launching this year. And I have partners, as I said, like who've, in fact, Kevin I met at the at 100MME, who was like a master at e-commerce and clothing. And so he's built, you know, multi 7 figures, if not 8-figure brands in clothing. So I'm blessed with, again, great friends and now friends. In fact, I'm meeting him tomorrow. who've helped me figure out how to navigate this new terrain,
Yeah.
Same thing with with the artist. I mean, the guy who draws this, he's a legend. Like, he's actually was my rack mate in boot camp, in Marine Corp boot camp.
No kidding.
And now I've partnered with him. He's an incredible artist. And so we find even the supplement guy, I met through a friend, and like we've partnered. We have an equity partnership in our brand where he basically creates these custom formulas, brand, like everything. And my job, where I'm still not at the point where I can completely sort of disappear off the face of the earth for for months to go ski across Antarctica, but I'm working. I'm learning. Like, as you know, when you build a business, there's so many arms, things you don't know. You kind of navigate it one step ahead of time, and ideally learn from people who are further along the path than myself, like you and Craig. Like, I follow y'all and learn so much in that realm, because that's like, I'm so new to it still, But that's kind of how we've monetized so far. That's gotten me into a good spot where I can now afford to even the Denali. 3 weeks in the wilderness in Denali that I just came back from, that's the longest I've spent in the wilderness since 2012, when I spent a month skied across Greenland.
Gotcha.
So in that time, I went through my kind of low, bottomed out after Greenland, and then started focusing on the business, doing mini expeditions here and there. Like, I did a couple of week-long trips in Norway. But now I was only at a point where I could at least disappear for 3 weeks off the grid, and still, things are going.
How did it feel for you to, since 2012 was the last time you disappeared for a stretch of time.
Yeah.
I mean, that was some time ago.
Yeah.
Gosh, 11 years.
Exactly.
Right? So how did it feel to go away for 3 weeks, climb Mount Denali, come back and look at your business and go, holy crap, it's still there, it's functioning, everything's okay.
It's surreal, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's so surreal to be able to be in that spot. Like, I feel very grateful and blessed now. There's still work to be done for sure. That Denali was 3 weeks, relatively short compared to, like, in November, I'm going to be in Antarctica for 2 months. So that's even longer. So I definitely, like, now I'm grooming somebody to kind of take over as a COO and really run operations. So I have 5 months to get to that point.
Sure.
That, like, I can disappear for 2 months and be good to go,
So here's a great lesson for all of you that are watching and listening to this episode. Something that I get asked often by my coaching clients is, dude, I've built the systems. I feel I'm no longer working in the business. I'm working on the business. But how do I know that I've got enough systems and processes in place to open up a second, third, fourth, whatever, restaurant, dental practice, gym, whatever the thing is that they do? I'm like, oh, it's simple. Go away for 3 to 4 weeks. Just go away. They're like, really? I'm like, yeah, go on a 3 or 4 week vacation. And one of two things happen. One, they're like, dude, I feel super confident I could do that. And they go away and, they come back and like, dude, nothing fell apart. Or okay, a few things fell apart, but it's fixable. Found some cracks in the foundation.
Likewise.
The other thing that happens is, hell no, I'm not going away, which means that there are things that they just didn't want to address.
Yeah.
Maybe there's like a bad employee or a process they just don't want to touch because they're not excited about selling or marketing or follow-up or whatever the thing is.
Yeah.
But I'm like, dude, well, there it is. So telling someone to go away for 3 to 4 weeks is either going to show you the problems or show you the opportunity that you have. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So good for you for doing that. So you're going from digital now to the physical world in terms of supplements and apparel line.
Yeah.
What's next for Fearvana as you look forward, like the next 5-10 years?
The big thing, sort of the flagship thing that we want to build when eventually getting into kind of the tech startup world, is building a platform that I'm going to call Fearvana Journeys. The idea is to build a virtual world that interacts with the real world. That you remember when that Pokemon Go thing came out?
Yes.
Like, so kind of like using augmented reality in kind of a video game. So I have friends in gamification who are masters at their craft to create this game, but unlike like Pokemon Go where you're just finding eggs or some stupid, you're actually like, you're the character in your game and your life is the game. So we want to create this, like, using Fearvana methodologies, using these guides to, and I don't know anything about tech startup. Again, I have friends who are way smarter than me in this, but I'm right now focusing on building getting the brand to a kind of the next level. We're on that cusp of that tipping point, where it's really like there. And I want to focus on, for the next 2 years, on an expedition that I'm training for. Once that expedition is done in 2022, that's when we want it. Until then, just keep building the brand, keep building the revenue, keep getting the name out there further. And then I'm going to start building this Fearvana Journeys platform. And that I see as the flagship thing. There's honestly nothing like it out there. Like a video game that interacts with the real world, but you're the character in your own video game. So it's not like...
And your life is the video game.
Your life is the video game.
Wow.
But so the idea is, that's what I was saying earlier, is like Fearvana is about helping you find, live, and love your worthy struggle. And this will be the tool to help you do that. So I call it your worthy struggle. Your worthy struggle is your path. Right? Like, not that passion is a bad thing. Obviously, it's great to have passion for what you do. But often when you say follow your passion, it conveys the idea that like life is sunshine and rainbows and unicorns. Like if you do what you love, you'll never do a day of work in your life. And I think that's nonsense. Like I love what I do, but there are days when it's work. Like it's hard, you know? And so the idea is, and that's why I call it your worthy struggle. Like the struggle worthy of who you are and who you want to be. It doesn't have to be climbing mountains or running ultra marathons or even building a business. It could be, I want to be a school teacher, then be the best in the world at that, you know? Like whatever your struggle is. Because why I call it a struggle is because the real question to be asked whenever you're finding out what that is not which passion do I want to follow, but which struggle am I willing to endure? Because you're going to retreat and surrender to the lowest like denominator, right? Like the chain is as strong as the weakest link. So you're going to fall to the struggle. You're going to fall to what you're willing to endure. And so at any crossroads in life, like work this job I hate, start a business, either path is going to be a struggle. Any crossroads, you name it, in relationship, anything, there's going to be a struggle. So the question is, which struggle are you willing to endure? And what I want to do is like help people find, live, and love that, and create this sort of game that will help people turn their life into this sort of video game. Yeah. And again, I'm blessed with way smarter friends to help me build that.
You know, funny that you say this. So at the beginning of the episode, you talked about the Marine Corp ethos and kind of the saying there, which is embrace the suck, right? Like just go all in and find the bliss in that. It's really what you're looking to do, because all of life is chaos with brief moments of bliss and happiness. And if you could just find the joy, the bliss, the opportunities, just the fulfillment in that chaos, like you could really do magical things in this 100 years or so that you have on this planet.
Yeah.
Purpose. How does someone find their purpose?
So great question. You know, so the way I kind of help people start is start looking at the things you don't want. It's a little easier to know what we don't want. Like it's very easy for somebody to say, I want nothing to do with climbing Denali or something like that, right? Sure. So start by looking at things you don't want. And you want to start with the framework you want to look at is work backwards from the future, not forwards from the present. So if I say, okay, let's just look 5 years. Like what's my lifestyle look like, right? So let me start, here's the things I don't want. You know, some people might say, I don't want to travel. I want to stay at home with the family. Cool. Again, there's no right, wrong, right? Our game here that we're playing is what's our path. What's going to trigger our neurochemicals to experience bliss. So once we start things we don't want, start looking at things we do want, okay? Start building this out, getting like extremely clear on it. Once you do that, start looking at people who look around you, look for references of people who are creating that. Who has that? And then once you start seeing that, start looking at, okay, can I get that way? So what I mean by it is you want to start, like I'm all about stretching the limits of the impossible, obviously, but you want to be somewhat realistic. Like I could look at, let's say, LeBron James and say, that dude's living a lifestyle I want. I'm never going to go into the NBA right now. It'd be stupid for me to try, right? It's just like I'm 36 years, like, so you want to like take some degree of pragmatism about where I am, and then also be willing to stretch to the impossible, right? There's a duality that play there that both can coexist. So I can say, okay, LeBron James has a lifestyle, but you know what? That path's not for me. There's entrepreneurs like, okay, Bedros is living a certain life. These other guys are living a certain life. That's kind of, I think I can do that path. Cool. Now let me figure out once I figured out who's doing it, how do they think? What have they done? How are they doing it? You know, when we follow from mentors, it's not just about how they did what they did and what they did, but the great thing to start asking is what are their belief systems? Because you will find out, like entrepreneurs like you, they have a different belief about business. You will, like if I ask you a question, what do you believe about business? Your answer will almost certainly be something positive. You know, like
Yeah, well, it's what I do. I treat it as a hobby.
It's something, but if you ask somebody else who's never built it, they might say things like, I believe a business is hard, it's scary, it's impossible. It's like, so their belief systems about things will be different. So how do they think? Once I have a sense of a path, then I start embarking upon it. Now, you're never going to know, as you know, you're never going to know all the steps. So you can say, okay, look, I'm going to choose this worthy struggle, right? This is my worthy struggle. I know I will suffer. I have a sense of the suffering. One of the things I also like to do when I work with people is write down, like, this path, these are some of the struggles I will have to endure. You might not know all of them yet. Great. But here's some of the struggles that I know I'll have to endure. Am I willing to endure it?
Almost as a self-check, like write down what you know you'll likely endure and go, am I willing to endure
Am I willing to endure it, right? So, I mean, even for me, like choosing to be the sort of an entrepreneur / adventurer is very different than a sponsored athlete, right? So this requires its own set of struggles. Am I willing to endure it? Obviously. Now I've chosen that path. Once you do it, then go ham down that road. Like obsess. Let it consume your soul. Live it, breathe it.
Isn't obsession bad?
Obsession is, I know, love it. I know that obsession sometimes has a demonized, like the word is demonized. It is the most beautiful thing in the world to be absolutely obsessed about your craft to the point that it consumes your very soul. Like you wake up, you breathe it, you live it. Like, and it doesn't even have to be necessarily like the specific thing. Like one thing I love doing, like for me, for example, is I have a philosophy statement, a mission statement. So like just like companies have it, right? So get clear, what's your philosophy about life? So my philosophy is the path to inner peace is the pursuit of a worthy inner war. So that's my philosophy of what I believe life is about. So how do we find that inner peace to pursue our own worthy inner war? Call it your inner struggle, right? Like what's your worthy struggle? So my war is this, right? Like I go to war with myself every day. Whether it be running, building the business, I'm going to war with myself. Ultimately, it's not about whoever else. It's not about the mountain. I'm fighting me. I'm going to battle with myself. And so that's my philosophy statement. So every day, it's like, am I living that philosophy? So by crystallizing your philosophy, by crystallizing your mission, by crystallizing your vision, crystallize your values. Like, as an example, I had to make a really tough decision on Denali whether to take this drug for high altitude pulmonary edema, and which was your lungs fill up with fluid. And I used my value system to guide that decision. Like my fundamental value for Fearvana and myself is self-transcendence so that others may live. That's what it's all about, the number one value. So once I have that crystallized, I use that to make decisions. So once you get clear on all this stuff, then you obsess about it. I know here's my path. And look, obviously things are never going to go exactly as you've lined up. Denali didn't, life doesn't. But then you adapt. You know, you might go, like when I joined the Marines, I wanted to go career Marines. That changed. Do I have any regrets? Was it a waste of time? Absolutely not. You know, like it was something I'm damn proud of, and it shaped me into the person I've become today. So the path changed, but that led me to what I do now. So go ham on that path and recognize that you're going to suffer, right? You're going to struggle on that path. And then you keep pursuing it. You obsess about it because obsession like consumes you in the most beautiful way. Like I know you asked that question facetiously, like, is it bad? But it's so beautiful because it consumes you. Like how beautiful is it to wake up like feeling alive that this is who I am?
Sure.
This is what I live for.
So what about the people? What about the people around you that say, you know, gee, you just seem so obsessive. You seem so overly consumed with what you're doing. How do you handle the people? Deal with the people that are. I don't want to say they're hating because that's their path. Like if someone wants balance, I'll always say I don't have balance in my life. I have a work-life mix, and I love that.
Yeah.
When I try and find balance, in fact, a long time ago, my wife's like, "Hey, let's go to the beach. You could read a book and you can kind of dig your toes into the sand." The idea of that sounded really awesome, dude. And so she's laying next to me. I got my toes in the sand. I'm laying down. I'm reading a book. Like I don't even know 5 minutes had ticked by. I was like, hey, listen, I'm going to go into the water and just fight the waves. I'm just going to fight the waves. And she goes, why? I'm like, I just can't do this. I like books on audio. I need to be driving. I need to be doing multiple things at any given time where I feel this sense of accomplishment. I drove to a destination while learning new stuff, while seeing new things as I'm driving. And I realized something about myself that was relaxation for me, just battling the waves, getting exhausted, and the waves were the bear in my life, and I was battling the inner dragon. Am I willing to go deeper into the water and deal with bigger waves and get sucked underneath? And that gave me a sense of accomplishment when I came out, and exhaustion was like, you know what? I bet that person who's like snoring, sitting like laying down on the sand, has that same level of like bliss that I do after battling that wave. Like just two different experiences at the beach. And so how do you deal with people like that? And how could someone deal with people who aren't maybe, don't share the same values?
You know, it's hard because I think it's rarer to find that level of obsession than it is. And again, it's not a right-wrong thing. Like if that's what you seek, the balance, cool.
Right.
But you're going to lose some relationships along the way. I have. The people who stick around, they get you. My own family thinks I'm out of my mind with what I do, right? So most people do. My friends are like, dude, you're nuts. Like when I put, what do you do for fun? Like I drag tires, I run for 12 hours, you know, I suffer. So you're going to have people think you're out of your mind, but you're also going to find a tribe. Like my community now, they're obsessive in their own way, you know? And so I think as you grow, as you evolve, your community evolves with you. And then you get to start surrounding yourself with people, because when you live at that wavelength, whatever it may be, whatever you seek, right? Again, whether it's like on that obsessive path, you'll find other obsessives. That's what led me to 100 ME. That's why I'm sitting here with you, right? We have that similar wavelength, right? I couldn't sit on the beach just like you. I'd go running for 12 hours or something, you know?
Sure.
So you find your community, and it may be rarer, and you may lose some people along the way, but the people you will gain as a result will more than like, and I don't say make up for it, but it's profound, the people you'll find in your tribe.
Yeah.
And you'll always have, like, your family might think, and you have to be willing to recognize that, like you said earlier, and it's a really important point, that everybody operates from their own paradigm of the world. So your family will tell you things that you may completely disagree with, but they're like, if they're caring, they're telling you from a place of love. They just don't get you. Right now, my family's been like, look, you do whatever you do you. I'm not, we get it. We love you for it, but you do you. So the ones who really get it, they'll stick around. They may think you're out of your mind, but they'll be there for you anyway. You know.
Yeah. And that was one of the greatest things, and I think that was a really neat way to answer it, to say that it's okay to move on from people in your life who don't share the same value and may not understand, because. Look, there's people in my life who necessarily don't share my same work ethic. One of them is my dear friend Chanta. I've known him for 25 years. He works for the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandise. He fixes their laptops. And whenever I text him randomly, I'm like, hey man, what are you doing right now? He goes, well, my job is to fix MacBooks, but MacBooks never break, so I'm just like chilling like a villain. I could not chill like a villain, bro. I just can't, right? But he surfs 5 days a week. I love him to pieces.
Yeah.
And in the summer times, he and I are surfing all the time in the mornings. And I'll go, hey, Chanta, I'm going surfing. He's like, but the waves are no good today. I'm like, but I've scheduled surfing into my calendar. So it's flat, but I'll be the guy paddling, and you want to be the guy paddling next to me, and he'll just laugh because he goes surfing when the waves are good. I surf when it's scheduled.
You're systematized.
Right, exactly. I'm systematized. He's not. And so, yet he totally knows my kooky ways. And so he saw, like the other day on social media, I'm starting a new software company, and I was like, hey, this is the unsexy part of a software company. It was our conference room upstairs. There's 12 of us in there, papers all over the conference table, something on the projector screen, all types of energy drinks sitting out for everyone. And we're like on our 10th hour, and Ed came in and took a picture. But oftentimes people just see the Fit Body logo, the BK logo, this logo, the project logo. Well, before it ever becomes a logo, hits the Inc. 500 list, an Entrepreneur Fastest Growing 500 list, whatever, it's there in a conference room where we're talking about how do we get the millions. Who's going to be in charge? What are the tough conversations to have? And what seats are empty that we need to fill? And that's not sexy, but I thrive off that.
Yeah.
Yet I know that Chanta would never want anything to do with that.
Yeah.
And he would just be like, why would anyone do this? Yet he would benefit from the software that we create, right? And so that's very okay. But then I've got other people in my life who are like, dude, you're a different person. I don't know you. And through the help of my therapist, I was able to edit them out of my life. It's a great tool that Kevin Downing, my therapist, taught me. He goes, it's okay to edit people out of your life, or to have edited conversations with those people where if they go, hey, what are you doing now? To tell them I'm starting a new business is just going to be like, wait, you got 5 already. What's the benefit of a 6th? Like, they don't get it. Whereas, like, you've done all the crazy whack. Like, why now, like, whatever, trek across Greenland or wherever the next thing is going to be? Because you have to. There's no choice. Otherwise, you'll probably fall into some deep depression and anxiety. If I stopped working, because financially I can, but if I stopped working, the next thing would be self-sabotage, a dark place. Everyone like, why is Bedros so depressed and anxious, etc.? Because this is my zone of genius where I thrive, man. And so anyway, for me, I found that I could either edit people out of my life or hang with people who understand, but they don't have to necessarily embrace that lifestyle.
Yeah, it's similar. I have friends who think I'm out of my mind for running for 24 hours or something, right? They'll never do that, but they're like, cool,
So before we wrap this up, man, what is and I'm not going to say what's the craziest thing that you've done, not necessarily through your lens, because your lens is a little jaded, right? Because, I mean, you're extreme. You're extreme, and I love that. I respect that. I recognize that. But through the lens of the regular person, what are maybe the top 3 extreme or crazy things that you've done that either was via endurance, in terms of maybe temperature suffering, whatever it was?
Yeah. Skiing across Greenland, we spent 28 days dragging a 190-pound sled for 350 miles in minus 40 degrees. That ranks up there.
What was in the sled that was 195 pounds?
All your food for the 32 days worth of food and supplies, fuel, your tent. So it's everything to survive in that environment, because it's fully self-supported for a month essentially. And the storms were so intense that the following year after my crossing, a British explorer was killed in one of those storms.
Wow.
So brutal storms that battered the tent. And where polar exploration shines is it is an exercise in pure, like I've experienced a great deal in my life and nothing compares to the level of suffering in polar exploration. It is mentally, spiritually, and physically pure suffering. So like in Greenland, for example, every day you wake up, like I'm like Denali, every day there's a new new environment when you're moving from camp 1 to camp 2 or camp 2 to camp 3. The views are different.
Sure.
In Greenland, every day is empty white nothingness. 12 hours of empty white nothingness, and you're just skiing into that. And you have to be mentally
And it was 32
still.
days?
28 days. We had 32 days worth of food,
yeah.
But 28 days when we were out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that ranks up there. I'm trying to think like what I did for when the COVID thing first hit. I wanted to show people like, okay, look, we can still push ourselves. We don't need to be at the effect of this circumstance.
Yeah.
So I did a 50-mile run around a cul-de-sac. 1,000 loops just going mind-numbing all night around this like 0.05 mile cul-de-sac.
Jeez.
And 3 weeks later, I did a 24-hour run after that. So some of those runs rank up there as well.
Did you, I'm just curious, and I'll tell you why. Did you change directions halfway through? Or
so every hour, I would do a quick nutrition break, and then I would switch the cul-de-sac directions.
The reason I ask, so my father-in-law, my wife's dad, he's a doctor, he's a physician, and he had a patient who was major OCD, and she was diabetic. And so she comes to the office. She was overweight. And so he was like, you know what? We could really cure this diabetes if you lose the weight.
Yeah.
It's simple enough. And she's like, okay, what do I need to do? He's like, just exercise. Get tennis shoes and start walking. Well, they live in Seattle. Lots of rain.
Yeah.
Right? And not everybody wants to go out and run and move in the rain. So she took the doctor's orders. And so she straps on her tennis shoes and she walks around the coffee table every single day, like for miles at a time, right?
No way.
In one direction. And so 3 months later, she comes to visit the doctor, my father-in-law, and holy smokes, like your numbers are great. Your blood sugar numbers are fantastic. You've lost weight. You look great. She's like, I got this massive pain in my hips, right?
One side.
And he can't figure it out. Then he looks at her shoes and they're just like worn out, like in one way, right? He's like, some tells me those are connected. What happened? What were you doing to lose this weight? I know you, like, where were you running, exercising? She's like, oh, just around my coffee table in the house, right? He's like, okay, switch directions every day. Every other day, just switch directions. And that was the cure, because she just goes OCD and just went to one. That's why I asked. So,
great story. No, that's partly why I switched. I knew that one side would trigger more if I'm just going. So those were a couple of them. And then, other than the darkness retreat, which was pretty intense, like one of the ones, which I don't know if it's the most craziest, but definitely one of the most beautiful experiences was right before I did the darkness retreat, I did we were going to Liberia in West Africa to do like a sort of 2 weeks of humanitarian work and filming a documentary out there. And as one does, I decided to run across the country before the documentary started to raise funds to build a school. So I did a 7-day run, about a marathon a day for 1 week. And what made it intense was not just the running marathon a day a week. I was doing it in a country that had been through Ebola, brutal civil war, intense poverty, running through a country I'd never been through before. I didn't know anybody, and I mean, I stood out like I don't look like everybody in Liberia, So, I mean, it was a profoundly beautiful experience. Just as one quick example was, the first day these 2 kids started running with me, and we were starting chatting, and like one kid wanted to go to medical school, the other wanted to go to vocational training school. They lived in a tiny village in this like middle of nowhere Liberia, and the odds of that happening were damn near zero. And it just was so, like, as I was running the rest, what's the difference between me and that kid? Why I was born where I was born. As a result, I was blessed with a million times more opportunities. And he happened to be born in a country where one of the kids had lost his father to the war and living with the other kid because his mother had run off, and born in like hell, and what because I know a little bit about your story, and it just was a very humbling experience to see that, like, that side. I've been blessed to see a lot of it in poverty in India, working with leper colonies, working with like survivors of sex trafficking, the former child soldiers and stuff. So, and being in war, of course, as well. So that was really profound experience to get that. Like, and then you add the 7 days of running in like miserable heat. So the intensity of all of that combined was really profound.
Akshay, I got to tell you, brother, you definitely have taken suffering to a whole new level. In terms of being also able to articulate the beauty that it creates in humanity. Like, we'll look at David Goggins and we see that he just does incredible right, like 4,000 pull-ups in 24 hours or whatever, and the mileage that he covers, and he's just so profound in the way he explains about constantly beating yourself down to build yourself up. But in terms of explaining, articulating that how suffering really helps your consciousness shine and you get to meet this higher level of person. I haven't met anyone who can articulate that and draw that word picture out as clearly as you. And so you are a gifted man. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Where can our audience find you and learn more about Fearvana and maybe even start embracing some of these journeys and challenges themselves?
The book Fearvana is on Amazon in Audible, Kindle, paperback, and as I mentioned, all the proceeds go to the nonprofit Fearvana Foundation. And then you can find me at fearvana.com as well.
Right on, man. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show
brother.
today.
Appreciate you.
Guys and gals, do me a favor. And again, Fearvana is the book. You can find it on Amazon. And it's high time that you start suffering and finding the higher level of who you are and what you're meant to do on this planet. Thank you so much for watching this episode. Listening to this episode, as always, be sure to leave us a 5-star review on the podcast platforms, and as well as take a screenshot and tag both Akshay and myself on your social media platforms. We'll see you later.